I need you to understand just how ugly this really was. So at the time, I didn't even have a business. I had one client, and that client was basically just my old employer on a services contract. So it was really just employment with a few extra steps. And the worst part about all of this is that the hours for that agreement were scaling down, and my income was about to drop below my expenses, and I had no savings. So this wasn't some hopeful, let's try LinkedIn and see how it works. This was literally, if this doesn't work, if I can't figure out how to get new clients, I am fucked. And it's the exact moment that I did something which in hindsight looks insane. And to be honest, it is. I panic blasted LinkedIn DMs. So here's what actually happened. This started off with me trying to do things properly. The very first day that I ever attempted cold outreach, I sat down and I sent a grand total of 21 messages. And I remember it vividly because it felt like a huge deal. I did not sit down and spray 21 DMs. I audited every single person one by one. I sat down for half a day cherry picking who I thought were the perfect prospects, the most relevant people that I could possibly message, like I was building a surgical strike. And every single time I pressed send, I felt so exposed. Because you got to remember, this is coming from my personal LinkedIn profile. There's no company or brand to hide behind. It's my face, my reputation, and my whole identity on the line. It's not like running ads where you can hide behind some brand persona you've created. This literally feels like walking into a room full of strangers and announcing yourself. So I sent those 21 messages and then I waited. And I told myself the usual cope. Maybe they haven't seen it yet. People are busy. Replies take time. And so a day passes. Nothing. 2 days pass. Nothing. Not even a polite no. Just complete silence. And the silence is a special kind of pain because it makes you start questioning everything. Was the message bad? Do I look desperate? Am I annoying these people? Am I cringe? Did I just embarrass myself for no reason? But then on day 3, I finally did get a response. One single response. And it was a total shutdown. It was 2 words. Not interested. Full stop. So now, imagine my mental state for a second. I'm sitting there after wasting half a day of my life choosing the perfect prospects, sending these 21 messages that felt like a massive personal risk, and the outcome is silence and one no. And this is the moment that panic properly kicked in, because now I've got this new problem. Not only am I running out of money, but I'm also realizing something much more daunting, that this might not work at all. And if this doesn't work, I'm finished. My escape from the rat race will have lasted a grand total of 2 to 3 months, and I'll be back begging for a job. So the following Monday rolled around, and I did what a panicked man does when their back is up against the wall. I overcorrected. I set an alarm for something disgusting like 4:30 in the morning. Woke up and poured a strong black coffee. I sat down in the dark, I opened LinkedIn, and I went full survival mode. I took a template that had been written by ChatGPT and I copy and pasted it 347 times to every single person on my LinkedIn in one morning. 347 messages. That is not cold outreach. That is a man panicking. That is a man looking at the edge and deciding to sprint. And yes, in hindsight, this was totally reckless. I could have got my profile spam blocked. And if LinkedIn wanted to slap me for this, it would have been deserved. So now the total messages sent are 368. And here's what happened next. The replies start to trickle in. And because I did this manually copy pasting and did it fast, I made a bunch of stupid mistakes. At one point, I accidentally used someone's last name instead of their first name. That is literally how cooked I was. Just imagine for a second receiving a message like that. Your name's Ben Smith and you get a message, "Hey Smith." You'd think, who the fuck is this guy? And this is where the tsunami starts. Because once you push volume, you don't just get the odd gentle no. You get a fucking wave of rejection. And when it's all coming into your personal inbox, it hits hard. It feels like psychological trauma, even if it isn't. So here are the numbers, because I had to pull this data from LinkedIn after the fact and audit it. Out of those 368 messages, I got a total of 58 replies. That's roughly a 16% reply rate. Sounds decent, right? It wasn't. Because 57 of those replies were no. and one was yes. One. And that is the reality behind every cold outreach works story. So I'm going to show you the exact DM I sent, because this is the funniest part. It wasn't even good. It was generic. It was polite. It was vague, and it was low status. So here it is. I'm going to put it on the screen. Hey, not sure if you remember connecting. I've been adding a bunch of people lately, and you came up as someone that looked interesting. Don't get me started on how cringe that is, but anyway. I help business owners get more clarity around their numbers, cash flow, forecasting, decision making, all that good stuff. That line also hurts me. It's not always the right timing, but if it ever is, feel free to reach out. Cheers, Liam. Oh, that's cringe. No magic words, no insane hook, no, hey brother, I can 10x your revenue. Just a simple opener, a simple description of what I do, and a soft invitation, in a tone that sounds like a kid who is asking for permission and apologizing to be in the DMs. And then amongst that tsunami of no's, there's one reply that says, yeah, maybe. And that's it. Now, that is the whole game. That tiny sliver of interest that ultimately turned into more than $10,000 and changed everything. So what happened next? We teed up a quick call. I do what I always do. We met, got an understanding of what was going on, ran a basic diagnostic, dug into what they were currently doing, where there was opportunity to improve, and I pulled the findings together into a proposal which ultimately had two phases, a build phase and then a run phase. And I follow the same structure with all of my sales engagements. Build is effectively fixing the core mess or making improvements to what they're currently doing. And then the second phase, which is run, is the ongoing support. So ultimately they accepted, and the one-off project rolled into a retainer. And that is how a generic, cringe, panic DM turned into more than $10,000. And now let's circle back to the numbers, because this is the real lesson in all of this. 368 messages, 58 replies, 57 no, and 1 yes. That is fucking brutal. And if you're not prepared for that, then you should not do cold outbound, because you'll quit before you ever hit that yes. And this lesson reminds me of a story I heard from Alex Hormozy, which I think illustrates the principle perfectly. A mentor that he had when he was launching his gym business told him that they had success from putting flyers on customers' car windshields. And so he went out and he put out several hundred flyers over the course of a month, and he got nothing, 0 clients. And so he went back to his mentor and he complained that the flyers don't work. And his mentor basically laughed at him and said, we don't even test with less than 5,000. And then we scale to more than 5,000 a day. That's the kind of numbers we hit on a bad day before lunchtime. And that is the law. What it ultimately takes is much more than what you think it's going to take. And this applies to flyers, DMs, anything that's cold. Most people quit at 20. They never reach 200. And they definitely never reach 347 in a single morning. So they never get the receipt. It's not just about volume. Quality is very important. If you blast 368 messages to people who will never buy, all you do is scale rejection. List quality is the foundation. You want people who are actual buyers, who actually have the problem, and ideally you hit them when the timing is right. Because timing is very critical in all of this. You're trying to intercept someone who has the problem at a moment in time when they feel it enough to react. And a lot of that is just luck. And the only way to get consistent outcomes in a system with luck is volume. Volume is effectively a way to buy luck. But I need to be careful here because I don't want to mislead anybody. This was not easy, it was not a hack, and it's certainly not DM a couple of prospects and you're rich. This is psychological warfare, especially when you're doing it for the first time. Because when you do cold outreach from your personal profile, your brain does something stupid. It treats the silence like rejection, like personal judgment. And the most common outcome from cold outreach is silence. You send a message and nothing happens. You send another and nothing happens. You send a bunch more and you start to get a few no's. And this is where most people quit. Not because the channel doesn't work, but because they can't handle the lack of signal. Cold outreach is a nervous system game. You're sending these from your personal profile. Everything feels personal, even though it isn't. And the signal is delayed, and most messages do nothing. When you finally do get messages back, most of them are no. And you only get proof after you've already pushed volume and stomached a bunch of rejection and pain. But that's also why the first yes is life-changing. Not because you might have made 10 grand, but because it proves that it's possible, that the world will respond. And once you close that first deal cold, you can't tell yourself that it's impossible anymore. You can tell yourself that it's hard, that it's uncomfortable and that you hate it, but you can't tell yourself that it's fake and that it can't be done. So if I was doing this all again today, what would I change? First things first, I would tighten the list. I would only message people who are clean fits, who show obvious signals that they might be in the pain or have the problem that I solve. So my replies aren't so random and conversation doesn't rely on miracles. Second, I would cut the fluff out of that message and make it much shorter and more direct. The message that you saw worked, but it's soft, it's vague, and it's polite in a way that came from fear. Now I'd be clearer about the problem that I solve, and I'd aim to get on a short call faster. And I would also follow up better rather than just blast a single message and then hope. Because a lot of deals don't come from the first message, they come from the second message or the third message, when the timing shifts or the person finally has a moment to respond. So if you're watching this and you're sitting in a job that you hate, telling yourself that you can't escape, here is the truth. It is possible, but it's not cute and it's definitely not easy. You are going to have to eat silence, you're going to have to eat rejection, and you're going to have to push volume that feels unreasonable. And you're going to have to detach your identity from the outcome, because cold outbound is not a business strategy. It is a psychological endurance test. And if you pass the test, you get your first receipt. And after that, the entire game looks different.